My dog came inside one afternoon in July, scratching at her neck like something had moved in. I checked her coat near the fence, near the back steps, along the edge of the patio where the grass stays a little thick. 7 fleas? 8. Then I stopped counting. I had already sprayed the yard twice that month. I had the collar on her. I had the spot treatment on the back of her neck. And fleas were still setting up permanent residence in my backyard like they had signed a lease. The thing nobody told me before I started spending money on all of that is this. Sprays kill the fleas in your yard right now. They do not do anything about the conditions that keep producing new fleas next week and the week after. A flea does not care how many bottles you have in the garage. It cares about whether your yard is humid enough, shaded enough, and warm enough to stay comfortable. And if the answer is yes, it stays. More arrive, you spray again. The cycle continues. What changed things for me had nothing to do with a new product. It had to do with what I started growing around the yard, because certain plants create scent environments that fleas find genuinely unpleasant. Not because the plants are toxic, not because they repel every insect on Earth, but because fleas navigate by smell. They locate hosts through body heat, breath, and skin odors. When an area carries strong aromatic compounds that compete with or interfere with those signals, fleas become less comfortable there. They look for somewhere easier. I want to be honest about what this means and what it does not mean. These plants will not make your yard sterile. A heavily infested yard will not clear itself in a week because you put in a lavender border. What they do is make your yard a less attractive address over time, as part of a system that also removes the damp, shady corners fleas love most. That combination is what actually moves the needle. Today I am going to take you through 9 plants worth growing. And at the end, I will tell you 3 things many people do around the yard that make flea problems quietly worse every single year. Number 1. Lavender. My grandmother kept lavender along every walkway at the edge of her property. She was not doing it to repel anything. She just liked how it looked and smelled. But I never once saw a flea problem in that yard. I thought that was luck. Years later, I understood it differently. Lavender contains linalool and linaloyl acetate. These are the compounds that give it that clean, calm fragrance people put into candles and bath products. To us, it is pleasant. To fleas, which are navigating by scent to find their next warm-blooded host, that strong aromatic interference makes the area harder to work in. Their whole system for locating a meal depends on reading a clear scent environment. Lavender muddies that signal. Where lavender really earns its place is around the edges of the yard, near the patio, along the path between the house and the lawn. These are the transition zones where fleas tend to concentrate. A dog runs through the grass, picks up fleas near the fence line, trots back across the patio, and brings them inside. Lavender planted along that route does not stop every flea. Nothing does. But it makes that route less hospitable than the untreated alternative. Grow it in full sun. Lavender does not want rich soil or frequent watering. It wants lean, well-drained ground, and to be largely left alone. If you are in the southeast, where summers are brutally humid, look for phenomenal lavender. It handles heat and humidity far better than most English varieties, which tend to collapse in August like they have quietly given up on life. Number 2. Rosemary. Rosemary has the same core principle as lavender, but with a sharper, more aggressive scent profile. Camphor, cineole, pinene, limonene. These are the compounds that give it that resinous, slightly medicinal smell. To fleas trying to track carbon dioxide and warm skin, that scent environment is disruptive. It is not the smell of somewhere they want to be. And unlike a spray that dissipates in hours, a rosemary shrub keeps producing those compounds all day, every day, through the whole growing season. Rosemary also happens to be one of the easiest plants to grow along a yard edge, a fence line, or around a raised garden bed. It tolerates drought, handles neglect well, and produces a low woody shrub that gives you something functional even in the dry months when other plants look exhausted and miserable. It does not need babying. Give it sun and drainage, and it handles itself. Plant it where the dog likes to patrol, along the fence, near the back gate, around the corner of the patio. The goal is creating a scent perimeter in the places where fleas are most likely to wait for a passing host. You do not need a botanical garden. You need a few well-placed plants in the spots that actually matter, and rosemary planted in those spots quietly works every hour it sits there. Number 3. Mint. Here is the plant I have a complicated relationship with. Mint is genuinely one of the strongest natural scent deterrents you can put in a yard. Menthol and menthone create a sharp, cool intensity that fleas find extremely unpleasant. Peppermint especially. The scent is so strong and so chemically disruptive to a flea's sensory system that even a small planting near a high-traffic zone makes a real difference. My complicated relationship with it is that mint has the self-discipline of a 5-year-old handed a credit card. Plant it in the ground and come back in 2 seasons. Your garden is mint now, all of it. You are growing mint with a few confused tomatoes somewhere in the middle wondering what happened. Contain it, grow it in pots. Set the pots on pavers or hard surfaces where the roots cannot find soil. Place those containers near the back door, around the patio, along the edge of the dog run. The scent still carries. The mint still does its job, and your garden remains your garden. Number 4. Lemongrass. Lemongrass contains citronella, which is the compound most people recognize from candles and mosquito repellent products. What many people do not realize is that citronella works just as meaningfully against fleas. The sharp, citrus-forward scent disrupts a flea's ability to detect and navigate toward its target. Same mechanism, different pest. And a living plant producing that compound continuously is a different situation from a candle you light for 2 hours and then forget about. Lemongrass is also one of the more visually appealing plants on this list. It grows tall, about 3 to 4 feet, with long, flowing grass-like leaves. Near a fence line or at the edge of a garden bed, it looks intentional rather than thrown together. It is a warm climate plant that does not survive frost, so if you are in the northern half of the country, grow it in a large container you can bring inside when temperatures drop in the fall. The container version works perfectly well. The leaves are useful in cooking too. The same compounds that bother fleas are the ones that give Thai and Vietnamese dishes that distinct aromatic quality. A plant doing 2 jobs in one corner of the yard is the kind of thing that feels genuinely worth the space it takes up. Number 5. Chrysanthemums. This one is the most direct flea deterrent on the entire list. Chrysanthemums, particularly the species Tenacitum cinerarifolium, produce pyrethrin naturally in their flower heads. Pyrethrin is the compound that most commercial flea sprays are based on. The synthetic version is called permethrin. The plant makes the real thing on its own. Pyrethrin affects the nervous system of insects on contact. Fleas exposed to it become disoriented and paralyzed. This is why chrysanthemum extract has been used in pest control for centuries, long before synthetic versions existed. Farmers knew about this. Gardeners knew about this. It somehow became less common knowledge once the bottled version arrived on store shelves. Growing chrysanthemums around the yard does not saturate the space with enough pyrethrin to function as a chemical barrier, but it contributes to an environment fleas find actively unpleasant rather than merely inconvenient. Plant them in sunny spots, in borders and along edges. They bloom in late summer and fall, which aligns with a particularly active flea season in many parts of the country. The timing is not accidental. Number 6. Pennyroyal. Pennyroyal is the name you will hear from older gardeners who dealt with fleas before the pet aisle in every store was stocked floor to ceiling with chemical options. It belongs to the mint family, which explains both its strong scent and its tendency to spread aggressively if planted in open ground without any containment plan. Pelargone is the main compound responsible for its repellent effect. It is sharp, slightly medicinal, and intensely aromatic in a way that fleas and several other biting insects find deeply unpleasant. People who kept working dogs, barn dogs, yard dogs, historically would plant pennyroyal near the dog's resting area and along the paths the animal traveled most often. It was not decorative, it was functional. Grow it in containers for the same reason you contain mint. Placed near the dog bed, the back door, or the transition point between lawn and patio, It provides real deterrent value. One important note: pennyroyal essential oil is extremely concentrated and should never be applied directly to pets. The plant growing in the garden is a different matter from concentrated extracts, but it is worth knowing that distinction clearly before you do anything with it. Number 7. Catnip. Before you decide this sounds like a joke, hear it out. Catnip contains nepentolactone, a compound that has been studied for insect deterrence with results that are genuinely interesting. Research from Rutgers University found nepentolactone to be more effective than DEET at repelling certain insects under laboratory conditions. Whether that translates directly to field conditions at the scale of a backyard is a more complicated question, but the underlying chemistry is real and not something to dismiss. Catnip grows easily, tolerates poor soil, and spreads readily without much encouragement. It is also, predictably, a magnet for neighborhood cats. If you have a cat who already treats the backyard like a personal wellness retreat, growing catnip may solve one problem while introducing a completely different kind of chaos. For everyone else, it is a low-effort plant with real deterrent credentials that tends to get overlooked because its reputation as a novelty crowds out its actual usefulness. Planted in borders, along fence edges, or in containers near areas where fleas concentrate, the scent is mild to most people, but carries well enough into the surrounding space to matter. Number 8. Basil. Sweet basil releases volatile oils into the air throughout the day, especially when leaves are disturbed or when the afternoon sun heats them. Eugenol, linalool, and several other terpenes make up that complex aromatic signature that makes it so distinctive in a garden. Fleas, which are relying on clean scent signals to navigate toward a host, find that kind of aromatic interference genuinely difficult to work around. Basil also disrupts whiteflies, aphids, and certain other garden pests as a side effect of just existing in the ground. It is the kind of plant that earns its space several times over. Grow it near the patio, around the dog's outdoor resting area, or along the edge of the garden bed where lawn meets harder surface. Genovese basil is the most vigorous and fragrant of the commonly available varieties. Pinch flowers off as they appear to keep the plant producing leaves through the season. Once basil goes fully to flower, the scent production drops off and the leaves toughen up and turn bitter. Keep it vegetative and it keeps working. Number 9. Wormwood. Wormwood is the one on this list that does not try to smell pleasant about anything. Thujone, camphor, absinthiol. It is bitter, sharp, and carries an odor that most people either find intriguing from a distance or immediately want to walk away from. Fleas fall firmly into the second category. There is nothing subtle or negotiable about wormwood's position on the matter. Wormwood has been used to repel insects for a very long time, which is part of why it ended up in so many traditional preparations and formulas across different cultures. The silvery, dusty appearance of the leaves is visually distinctive, and a few plants along the edge of a bed or near a fence line create an aromatic deterrent zone that looks deliberate without demanding much maintenance beyond decent drainage and full sun. Artemisia absinthium is the species with the strongest scent. Powys Castle is a more ornamental variety that blends better into a mixed planting while still carrying that characteristic Artemisia bitterness. Do not plant it in a damp corner and water it constantly. Wormwood lives best when it is slightly neglected by someone who already has other things to worry about. That is genuinely the best growing advice for it. Now, 3 things that make flea problems worse, regardless of what you plant. None of these plants do their job well if the yard is still set up to attract and hold fleas in the first place. A scent deterrent, planted in front of ideal flea habitat, is fighting the wrong battle on the wrong front. The first is long grass along fence lines. Fleas do not need your entire lawn. They need a few patches of tall, damp, shaded grass where they can wait at the tip of a blade for a passing host. The fence line is where dogs run every single day, where wildlife crosses at night, where leaf litter collects and stays. If the grass there is tall and the ground stays moist, you are maintaining a flea corridor regardless of what else you have planted elsewhere in the yard. Cut it down. Keep it cut. The second is shaded ground cover that never fully dries out. Dense, low plantings that keep moisture locked in and sunlight out create exactly the conditions fleas need to survive and reproduce between hosts. Walk through the yard on a dry afternoon and find the places where the air under the plants feels noticeably cooler and damper than the rest of the space. A patch of Pachysandra against the house, heavy mulch piled deep, ground cover that has not been thinned in 3 years. Those are the places. They are not decorating your yard. They are housing your flea population. The third is the outdoor dog bed. This one catches people off guard every time. An outdoor dog bed that stays damp, sits in a shaded corner, collects shed fur, and is never washed or moved, is a flea habitat with a dog sleeping in the middle of it. Fleas lay eggs in fur, in fabric, in the debris that accumulates in a neglected pet resting spot. The eggs fall off the dog. They hatch in the bed. The larvae develop in the material around it. Then the adult fleas climb back onto the dog the next time it lies down. You can spray every surface in the yard, and that cycle continues uninterrupted if the bed itself is never addressed. Move it to a sunnier, drier spot. Wash it on a schedule. Check underneath it. When the yard stops being comfortable for fleas, the plants work better, and they stay working. When the plants are in place, and the yard has fewer ideal flea zones, the results look genuinely different than the month before. That is the version of this that actually holds across seasons, rather than just feeling like real progress for a week or two before the whole problem quietly comes back. If you have tried any of these already, or if your yard has a particular corner that stays wet and shaded no matter what you do, leave it in the comments. Tell me which plants you already have growing, which ones surprised you on this list, and where on your property fleas are consistently worst. Problems like that come up more than once, and the details people share in the comments often turn into the next video. If this kind of approach, dealing with the real conditions instead of just reacting to the symptom, is what you are looking for, subscribe. That is exactly what this channel is here for.